I've spent the afternoon walking beneath the broad leaves of the oak trees lining Maple Street, my mind swirling with anticipation and dread. It was my 25th birthday, and for weeks I had dreamed of the dinner Dad promised to host at his favorite Italian restaurant by the waterfront. A gentle breeze brought the scent of saltwater mixed with the faint aroma of garlic and basil from nearby kitchens. I wore the blue dress Mom bought me last year for my graduation, the one that hugged my shoulders and fell softly to my knees. My heart beat fast as I approached the restaurant's entrance, where warm lights spilled onto the sidewalk, casting dancing shadows against its brick facade. The wooden sign above the door read Sophia's Trattoria, in flowing script, the letters outlined in a soft gold that glowed at dusk. People lingered at tall tables outside, laughing and sipping Prosecco, as waiters carried plates of steaming pasta and crisp bruschetta. I spotted Dad in a corner booth where the window framed his silhouette against the twilight sky. His back was turned as he tapped at his phone, shoulders hunched slightly, and I worried he might be lost in some urgent work email or an unexpected problem. Beside him sat my younger brother, Noah, swirling a glass of red wine with a dreamy expression. Mom and my older sister Claire waited to be seated, clutching their coats and complaining about the evening chill. I hesitated before slipping into the booth opposite Dad, placing my purse on the seat next to me. The fabrics of the upholstery smelled faintly of oregano and leather. I smiled at Mom as she brushed hair from her face. The restaurant's low hum of conversations and clinking silverware felt comforting, like a promise that everything would be okay. I took a deep breath as I sat down, tasting salt and excitement in the air. I glanced at Dad's phone, curious why his fingers hovered over the screen instead of resting on the table. When his eyes met mine, he offered a quick, tight smile and nodded, as if to say everything was fine. Then my phone buzzed with a new message from him. "Don't come." My chest tightened and a knot formed in my throat. I swallowed hard, bringing my hand to my lap to still its tremble. Around me, laughter rose like bubbles in a glass, carefree and bright, but I felt suddenly distant, as if I were watching from behind thick glass. I slipped my phone into my pocket and folded my hands on the table, determined to ignore the sting of disappointment. I caught a glimpse of Dad's jaw clenching and turned my gaze to the water beyond the window, its surface shimmering with city lights. I would find out what he meant later. I pressed my lips together, focusing on the crisp white tablecloth and the polished silverware laid out before me. The waiter appeared with menus, his apron tied in a neat bow, and I forced a nod that must have looked enthusiastic. Mom ordered a glass of Pinot Grigio and gave me a curious glance. Claire asked if everything was okay, but I only smiled and said I was excited for the lasagna. Noah started teasing about my birthday cake, and a small laugh escaped me, genuine enough that Mom relaxed. Yet beneath the facade, questions swirled. Why would Dad not want me there? Had I misunderstood his tone? Was there a hidden reason he wanted me to stay home? I folded my napkin and let the hum of voices wash over me, determined to keep my worry hidden. I tapped my foot against the leg of the chair, barely noticing. The waiter returned to take our orders, sliding a plate of fresh bread between Mom and Claire. The aroma of roasted garlic and olive oil wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Dad finally lowered his phone and joined the conversation, asking about work and my plans for the weekend. I answered politely, describing my idea to visit a new art exhibit downtown. He nodded, his gaze drifting toward the window again. My stomach twisted as I realized no one else seemed to notice the tension in his eyes. Noah chattered about the cake, and Claire praised the restaurant's ambience. I reached for my glass of water, deliberately avoiding eye contact with Dad. Through the glass, the city lights pulsed with life, reminding me that outside the world was moving forward without waiting for explanations. I folded my napkin with care, pressing it flat on the table and staring at the hill of bread on the plate. My heart felt heavy, but I refused to let the evening unravel. Part of me wanted to confront Dad then and demand an explanation, but another part whispered that I should wait until later. I looked at his profile as he spoke to Mom, his voice calm. In that moment, I realized I was seeing him in a new light, older and more distant, carrying burdens I did not understand. The waiter paused with his pad raised, awaiting my order. I smiled and asked for the lasagna, my voice steady even though my hands shook slightly. The words sounded simple but felt like an act of defiance. I would stay. I would face whatever was coming. I finished the last bite of lasagna and leaned back against the booth, letting the warmth of the meal settle into my chest. The garlic and cheese lingered on my tongue, blending with the faint taste of red sauce that clung to my lips. I watched as Dad ran a hand through his hair, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky outside. My family chatted around me, Noah teasing Claire about her new job, Mom complimenting the restaurant's cozy lighting, but I felt apart from them, cocooned in my own thoughts. The waiter arrived with the check, sliding the leather folio across the table with a soft thud. I reached for it before anyone else could move, surprising Dad with the suddenness of my action. He looked at me over the rim of his wine glass, eyebrows raised, and I simply smiled. "I've got it," I said, voice steady. The table fell quiet for a heartbeat. Then Mom protested gently, "Honey, are you sure?" But I only shook my head. "It's my birthday treat," I told them, unbuckling my purse strap. I handed the waiter my credit card without waiting for another objection, and as he walked away I felt a small thrill of control, of reclaiming the evening for myself. While we waited for the bill, Dad cleared his throat. His voice was low, almost hesitant, like he was weighing each word before letting it slip out. "Emma," he began, using my childhood nickname. My heart thumped at the sound of ITT. Had been years since he'd called me that. "I didn't mean to hurt you earlier." The message, I panicked. I folded my arms, watching his reflection in the window pane, the lights of the passing boats flickering across his face. "Panicked how?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Your mom and we've been fighting lately. This transfer came up at work, and I thought if I didn't answer you, maybe you'd stay out of it. I was trying to protect you." My chest tightened at his words. Protect me from what? I had grown up believing Dad could handle anything. Now I wondered if he was keeping secrets bigger than petty spats. The waiter returned with the receipt, and I signed without reading, sliding the folder back in his hand. The click of the clip felt loud in the hush that followed. I said nothing as we stood to leave, letting the tension hover between us like the scent of garlic that still hung in the air outside. The night air was cool against my overheated cheeks. The restaurant's neon sign glowed behind me, bathing the sidewalk in amber light. I buttoned my coat, stuffing my hands into the pockets as Mom draped an arm around my shoulders. "Thank you for dinner," Claire said softly, and I managed a small nod. Noah offered to walk me to my car, but I shook my head. "I need some air." I started down the street alone, the sound of my boots on the pavement echoing in the quiet. Cars cruised past on the adjacent avenue, headlights sweeping across the buildings like searchlights. I walked without a destination, letting the city lights blur as tears welled in my eyes. I thought back to simpler birthdays moments, when Dad would tickle me as I blew out candles, when we'd laugh until our sides ached. Those memories felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else's life. I paused at a park bench overlooking the water, the gentle lapping of waves soothing and sad. I pressed my palms against the cool metal armrests and closed my eyes, breathing in the salt air. The emptiness stretched inside me, but so did a spark and urge to demand the truth. After what felt like minutes, I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Dad's name in my contacts. I wanted to delete his message, to pretend it had never happened, but something inside me wouldn't let me. Instead, I tapped call, and the line clicked open. His voice sounded tired when he answered, barely above a whisper. "Emma, why didn't you just tell me you were upset?" I asked, controlling the tremor in my voice. There was a long pause. I didn't want to ruin your birthday," he replied, "but leaving you hanging, sending you away, that was worse." My heart clenched at his confession. I leaned forward on the bench, the wind tugging at my hair. "Worse," I echoed. "I paid for dinner tonight, Dad. I stayed because I wanted to see you." He swallowed audibly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I should have been honest instead of pushing you away." I traced patterns on the bench's surface with my fingertip. "What's really going on with you and Mom?" I demanded. He hesitated again, then sighed. "It's complicated. Work's been stressful," and a car alarm blared across the street, cutting him off. I rubbed my eyes, realizing how late it was. "Let's talk tomorrow," I said. "Please." He agreed softly, and we hung up. I slipped the phone into my pocket, feeling both lighter and more uncertain than before. The next morning, I woke with sunlight streaming through my curtains, painting golden rectangles on the floor. My head ached slightly from the night's tension, but my resolve was clear. I texted Dad, "Let's meet at the Cafe on Elm at noon." He replied almost immediately, "I'll be there." I dressed in jeans and my favorite gray sweater, the one he used to tease me about, and headed out. On the way, I stopped at the bakery for a cinnamon roll, my birthday tradition, and bit into its sticky sweetness, letting it fill the quiet hollows inside me. I thought about forgiveness and honesty, about how sometimes the people you love most can hurt you the deepest. But I also believed in second chances. When I reached the cafe, Dad was already sitting at an outdoor table, stirring his coffee. He looked up, surprised when I slid into the seat opposite him. The chairs wobbled slightly on the uneven pavement. "Happy belated birthday," he said, voice soft. I smiled, folding my hands on the table. "Thank you," I replied. "Let's talk." And as the morning sun warmed our faces, I felt the first real hope that we might find our way back to each other, one honest conversation at a time. The sun warmed the outdoor cafe as I slid into the chair opposite Dad, the steam from his coffee curling toward the sky. I traced the rim of my mug with a fingertip, gathering courage for what might come next. Dad folded his hands on the table, fingers lacing together. Neither of us spoke for a moment, only the distant hum of traffic and the clinking of dishes punctuating the silence. I let the pause hang between us, savoring the calm before emotions surfaced again. Dad cleared his throat, setting aside his phone. "Emma, I want to explain more," he began, his voice measured. "Mom and I have been drifting apart for months. I threw myself into work because I was scared of confronting the truth. When I saw your message, I panicked, afraid you'd get caught in the crossfire." I nodded slowly, absorbing his confession. The weight in his eyes reminded me of the burden he'd carried alone. "I'm sorry," he added, voice low. "I should have talked to you." The confession cracked something open in me. I folded out my napkin and laid it flat. "I appreciate you telling me this," I said softly, "but you have to understand how it felt. I'm 25. I'm not a child who needs to be protected through silence. I need honesty, even when the truth is hard." My words trembled slightly, raw and candid. Dad's gaze dropped to his coffee, ripples forming as he nodded. The breeze carried the scent of baked pastries from inside the cafe, grounding me in the present moment. He looked up, regret clouding his features. I was terrified of failing. As a husband, as a father, I thought if I avoided the problem, it would somehow go away. But then I hurt you instead. He paused, swallowing hard. "You've grown into a strong woman, and you deserve better from me." My throat tightened at his admission, but I felt a flicker of empathy. We were both learning to navigate pain and responsibility. "I deserve better," I agreed, "but so do you and Mom. You don't have to carry this alone." A waitress arrived, refilling our cups without interruption. Dad thanked her with a nod, and she walked away. The moment felt significant, like the slightest gesture affirming our progress. I leaned forward. "What will you do next?" I asked. His eyes met mine, candid and hopeful. "I want to go to counseling," he said, taking a breath. "Together with your mom, and I want to rebuild trust with you, too, if you'll let me." I exhaled, relief blossoming like the spring blossoms back home. "I'll be there," I promised. We spent the next hour mapping out steps. Dad committed to carving out time each week to meet with a counselor and check in with the family. I suggested we schedule a regular dinner, no distractions, just conversation. He smiled for the first time that morning, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I like that idea," he said. "Family dinners, no phones, just us." My heart swelled at the prospect of reclaiming traditions. We shook on it, sealing a pact that felt more meaningful than any contract. When we finally stood to leave, I felt lighter. The afternoon sunshine felt warmer, the city noises more melodic. Dad walked me to my car, placing a tentative hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. I hugged him briefly, careful to filter my emotions. "Thank you for being honest," I replied. We parted with a promise to keep the lines open, each of us carrying a renewed sense of commitment. Back home, the house smelled of vanilla and cinnamon. Mom's attempt at baking an early birthday cake. She greeted me at the door, concern and curiosity mingling in her eyes. "How did it go?" she asked. I smiled, stepping inside. I told her about the meeting, the agreement for counseling, and Dad's willingness to change. Her relief was palpable. She embraced me, whispering thanks and apologies for the tension Dad had created. Together, we planned the next step, calling the counselor to set an appointment. A week later, I sat between my parents in a softly lit office, the counselor greeting us warmly, The session was awkward. At first Dad's voice faltered, and Mom's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. I squeezed their hands, anchoring us in solidarity. As we talked, barriers crumbled. Dad spoke of fear and shame. Mom admitted resentment and exhaustion. I shared how their conflict had wounded me. Each revelation felt like a brick removed from a wall dividing us. Over the following sessions, we learned new ways to communicate, listening without judgment, naming emotions without blame, setting boundaries to protect our bonds. There were setbacks, raised voices, moments of doubt, but also breakthroughs, laughter, gentle apologies, the comfort of being heard. I watched my parents rediscover respect and affection, and I found my own place as both daughter and confidant. 6 weeks later, we gathered again at Sophia's Trattoria, the same restaurant where the night had almost fallen apart. The hostess led us to a round table where a small candle flickered in the center. We ordered pasta and antipasto, sharing bread and laughter like a ritual. When Dad raised his glass to toast my birthday belatedly, he thanked me for my patience and my strength. Mom reached across, squeezing my hand. I realized then that our family had not only survived its fracture, it had grown more resilient. Later, on the drive home, I watched the city lights blur past the window. I felt gratitude so deep it swelled my chest. My 25th year had begun with a painful message and tears alone on a bench. It would now continue with honesty, understanding, and the renewed warmth of family. As we pulled into the driveway, Dad clipped his seatbelt and offered me a small, genuine smile. "Happy 25th, kiddo," he said. I reached out to squeeze his hand. "Thank you, Dad," I replied. And in that moment, I knew we were on the path forward together.